welcome. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about how to optimize your search strategy to drive real results. My name is Amanda. I am an automotive analytical lead at Microsoft, and I work with some of the top brands in the automotive space to uncover and forecast trends in the automotive industry. So because we are Microsoft, we have a wealth of data that's available to us via our web browsers and our powerful search engine, Bing. So we're really able to look across the entire digital space to understand how one is to operate to be successful in the automotive industry. We are also looking at things like consumer trends and journeys to understand that consideration process for the consumer, what they're considering as they purchase a vehicle. So today's session is called Owning the SERP, SERP being Search Engine Results Page. And we're essentially going to talk about how you own the floor. But in this case, we're going to be talking about the digital floor. And we're going to address things like what that consumer search journey looks like, what that consideration process is. We are also going to talk about how we strategize and plan at the OEM national level. You're also going to get a look into how Tier 1, the OEM national level accounts, Tier 2, our regional dealerships, and Tier 3, our local dealerships, should be working together when we talk about search. We're also going to talk about search in a way that allows you to optimize your own strategy to understand how you be successful and drive your business. So when we think about that consumer search journey at a high level, we know that 76% of all car buyers use the internet to shop for a vehicle. We know that 69% of those buyers start off knowing very little about the vehicle that they want to purchase. So that time spent researching becomes so important in determining what make or model that consumer will purchase, and equally as important, where they are going to purchase it. So when we strategize at the OEM national level, in forecasting, we are building and creating algorithms and models, harnessing the power of predictive analytics in order to really understand what is going to happen in the marketplace. And we're not only pulling the vast amounts of Microsoft data that's related to automotive to build these models and forecast these trends, but we're pulling in external factors as well, such as weather patterns and the economy, because anything that can impact the consumer can impact that path to purchase, can impact how they're acting when it comes to the automotive industry. So what are some things that we consider? Per capita disposable income. Per capita disposable income has been increasing, representing buying power, purchasing power in the industry. Purchasing power that we want to make sure that we're tapping into and setting ourselves up for success. As per capita disposable income increases, discretionary spend increases. And similarly, when per capita disposable income decreases, discretionary spend decreases. So the consumer's ability to support debt-funded consumption is higher when we have per capita disposable income, higher buying power. We are also looking at things like the average age of a vehicle in terms of ownership. The average age of a vehicle for consumers has been increasing, representing pent-up demand in the marketplace. Now, normally when we see per capita disposable income increase, the average age of a vehicle decreases. Consumers are able to purchase. They turn over vehicles quicker. However, we are seeing that consumers are holding on to vehicles longer. Vehicles are lasting longer. So how are we thinking about our messaging to change that, to address that? We did a custom study for a set of brands that looked at a specific set of consumers in terms of how they were searching and researching for the specific particular set of models that had just hit the marketplace for sale or were just about to hit the marketplace for sale. And what we found was that for these consumers that were researching these new models, that they were simultaneously searching for parts and services for their own vehicle that they currently owned. So how are we communicating with the consumer to convince them that now is the right time to purchase? How are we communicating with them about our features and our values and the sales and the promotions that we may be running to get them to purchase now? And another thing that we look at, which we should all be thinking about in this room, is competition in the marketplace, something we're constantly keeping tabs on. And what we see is that 75 new vehicles are expected to launch in 2018. Significant because it's a 41% increase compared to 2017, a significant jump in competition, a lot of that revolving around the SUV marketplace in particular. So it's being forecasted that's going to equate to 3.09 million additional units that hit the marketplace for sale come 2019, once all these new models have actually hit the market. So we are talking about a huge surge in options for the consumer. So we see that there's pent-up demand, we see that there's increased buying power, we know there is going to be a surge in competition, more so than 2017 for the 2018-2019 marketplace. How are we operating? How are we thinking about search in a way that will help us drive our business? How are we communicating with the consumer to prove our value? And what we're going to talk about today is how you can do that with search, with paid search. We know that paid search has an important part in the media marketing mix. So what we're particularly going to talk about is how paid search can help impact brand perception. It can help impact how the consumer thinks about you in three main areas: top of mind awareness, are they remembering you? Purchase intent, are they more likely to buy from you? And market leadership, do they consider you a market leader? So before we launch into that, we're going to take a look at two examples of what that consumer purchase journey looks like in terms of the number of makes and models a consumer considers before they decide to make that final purchase decision. And when we do this sort of analysis for brands, and we're discussing with brands their strategies and what they should be thinking about when it comes to search, to pull this data, we're looking across the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So we're looking at via our web browsers, the internet activity. What websites are people visiting? What content are they consuming? And we're also looking at all of our searches across the automotive space. What are people looking for? We think about Bing. There are 17 million unique users on Bing, particular to automotive, that cannot be reached on any other platform. Bing also accounts for 40% of all paid clicks in the automotive industry. So when you think about the amount of data that we are pulling in to create these visuals, it's vast. And it's coming from a unique user set. It's coming from a lot of users who are highly engaged. So I'm about to put up a graph, and it's about that journey. We're going to look at two examples, like I stated, Lincoln Navigator and Ford F-150 in terms of that consideration process. And you're going to see a lot of lines with a lot of colors. The only thing that you should be concerned about is the more lines and colors, the more makes and models the consumer has considered. You are also going to see it span from week 0 to 10. Week 0 being the time that someone started their research process for a new vehicle. Week 10 being the time that someone has made their decision and activity has dropped off. The average time that we see a consumer spends researching a new model before they make that decision is around 9.5 weeks. So think about the fact that you have to keep a consumer engaged for around 9.5 weeks, sometimes less, sometimes more, when they are going throughout this journey purchase process. So let's look at example number 1. The Lincoln Navigator. And you see all these different colored lines, again, representing a different make or model. And the consumer starts at week 0, and they search, so they hit week 10 and land on the Lincoln Navigator. So we're essentially looking at everyone who landed on a purchase of a Lincoln Navigator and tracing all their activity back in terms of what that consideration process looks like. And in total, we're looking at 15 different models, 8 different makes considered in total before someone decided to purchase a Lincoln Navigator. And you see that breadth of consideration between weeks 0 and 4 really wide, and then it slowly narrows down as we get closer and closer to that decision-making time. So how do we use this to advise strategy? How do we think about this when we are planning at the OEM national account level? Well, one, it allows us to be aware of our competitor set. It allows us to be aware of our competitor set in the eyes of the consumer, because sometimes how we think about our competition and how we think about the marketplace may not always align with how the consumer thinks about the marketplace. So it allows us to identify gaps. It also allows us to see which consumers are popping up at which competitors are popping up at which time in the journey. What competitors are strongest at the beginning and then drop off? What competitors are strongest in the middle and then leave the journey? What competitors make it to the end and are strongest from the beginning, that time the person starts researching to the time consumers decide to make a decision? Who should we be most aware of in terms of our competition as those strong leaders in the eyes of the consumer? So it really allows us to advise strategy in terms of how we are thinking about our place within the marketplace when we are talking to brands. We're going to look at another example, the Ford F-150. And again, the more lines, the more colors, the more competition. So we were looking at a lot of lines, and we were looking at a lot of colors. So again, the breadth of makes and models that a consumer is considering before they get to that final decision on a purchase is expansive. And they start at week 0, the time that they start researching, and they head to week 10, and they finally decide to land on the Ford F-150. We are looking at, in terms of consideration, 19 different models, 13 different makes that consumers considered before they decided to make and land on the Ford F-150. And as we saw in the previous model, that consideration process is pretty large from week 0 to 4. The consumer is looking across a breadth of products, and I'm not sure if you could see it, but from that 0 to 3 drop off in terms of what they started researching, you'll see things like BMW, you'll see things like Hummer. So the consumer is looking across luxury and non-luxury, considering what's out there in the marketplace, what price points are available to them, what sales are going on, to really get an understanding of what's available to them, and that it slowly narrows down. Now, when we think about it at a dealership level, your role becomes incredibly important, especially when you hit that 6 to 10 week mark, when we see a rise in things like dealerships near me and price questions and test drive queries in terms of searches. So when the consumer is ready to purchase, how are you thinking about your position, especially when it comes to search, in order to capture that volume, to capture that decision? Because we know the end of that journey, when a consumer is ready to pull the trigger, we want to be there. We want to be there to capture them. We want to be there to communicate with them. We want to be there to convince them that my make and model is the best, and you can purchase it from me. So we've covered a lot in terms of how we plan at the national OEM level, in terms of what that consumer purchase journey is and how expansive it can be in terms of the number of makes and models that a consumer considers. So now we're going to talk about how you can use search to drive your business and how you should be using search in this very competitive marketplace. So some of the things that we are going to talk about. Talk about how to drive performance and efficiency. So how you should be appearing in the right position on the SERP based on query intent. Query intent being what the consumer is searching for. And we're also going to get to how that relates to Tier 1 OEM national level, Tier 2 regional dealerships, and Tier 3 local dealerships, and your position and role in that. We're going to talk about how to align your strategy with consumer behavior, how to ensure that you're communicating with the consumer in the right way to drive your own performance. We are also going to talk about a strategy called owning the SERP. Now, owning the SERP, search engine result page, is a strategy that allows you to increase your own performance while keeping out the competitor consideration. Again, think we're heading into a time where 2018-2019 marketplace is going to be highly competitive. How do you drive performance for yourself and eliminate the competition? And finally, we're going to talk about how you mine for continued opportunities. How do you grow your business in a very competitive marketplace to increase your consumer consideration, to have more consumers come to you for a purchase? So before we jump into the studies that we're going to show to address and speak to that, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of terminology when I talk about paid search. So that's a SERP, search engine result page. We see the search box at the top and the list of ads underneath it. So when we talk about paid search, and for the sake of these studies, we are talking about the mainline ads, the 4 top ads that appear. And those ads are paid search ads, and you'll see the little ad next to each of them. So again, we are focusing on paid search, the 4 top positions. And for the sake of this, we are going to be referring to it as mainline 1, mainline 2, and mainline 3 positions. This just means position 1 is mainline 1, position 2 is mainline 2, position 3 is mainline 3. And you're going to hear me refer to a few things in terms of terminology. We're going to talk about a brand query. A brand query is any search that contains a make or model reference. Toyota dealerships, 2018 Ford. It can also mean for you any search that contains your dealership name could be a brand query. We're also going to talk about a segment query, which is a non-brand query. Any search that contains no reference to a make or a model or your dealership name. So buy luxury sedan, crossover options, things of that nature. No mention of make or model. We are also going to discuss strategies that you should be implementing when you think about your business and search. And we're going to look at retention strategy. Retention strategy is when you bid and serve an ad on a search that contains your own make or model referenced. It could also be when someone searches for your own dealership. We're also going to talk about a conquest strategy, that is bidding and serving an ad on a competitor's make or model when it is searched. It can also mean at the dealership level when you bid and serve an ad on a competitor's dealership name. And you're going to hear me talk about a segment strategy, and that is when you bid and serve an ad that includes no mention or make of model. We're talking about non-brand. So think about these when we go through the studies, because we'll refer to them, but I'll remind you as we head along. So study number 1 is our brand lift study. We wanted to talk about this because we get asked a lot when it comes to paid search what the value of the impression is. Can I make an impact on the consumer by serving an ad alone? We know search is an important part of the media marketing mix. We've done studies to help prove that. When we think about search, does it impact brand perception for the consumer? Can you drive the consumer for your own brand in 3 main areas? Top of mind awareness. Will they remember you? Market leadership. Do they consider you a market leader? And purchase intent. Are they more inclined to buy from you? So the objective of the study was to evaluate if we can put a number on the impression, put a value to the impression, that by serving an ad alone, you could impact that consumer's thought process. And when you think back to the visuals that we saw of how long that consideration process is over a 10-week period, how many makes and models are considered, it is so important that we are driving awareness. And for this study, we hypothesized a few things. We hypothesized that just viewing an ad on the search engine result page would increase a consumer's purchase intent by viewing it alone, regardless of the click. We also hypothesized that the degree of increase would be stronger if you bid to mainline 1. And we also thought that possibly by serving more ads, you might drive the consumer's thought process even further for those 3 main areas, top of mind awareness, purchase intent, and market leadership. And we did this study by partnering with Ipsos. Ipsos is a research company. And we surveyed consumers who were about to purchase a vehicle in the next 3 months. And we asked them to conduct a search in a search bar where as they searched for their upcoming vehicle, live ads and links would appear. And we're essentially looking at a test control methodology. Individuals who searched and were served a branded ad, that's our test group, and individuals who searched and were not served a branded ad, and that is our control group. And we're comparing our test group to our control group to understand the impact on those 3 things, top of mind awareness, purchase intent, and market leadership. And please note, for the sake of this study, age and gender and previous vehicle ownership are all weighted equally. So what did we find? We found that when a consumer searched a segment search, which is a non-brand search, so no mention of make and model, this consumer has no preference as to how they are searching in terms of a particular model that they may want to purchase. When they searched a non-brand search, if a brand served a branded ad in mainline 1, there was an impact on the consumer in terms of top of mind awareness, perceived market leadership, and purchase intent. And you see that gray bar. That gray bar is our control group, individuals who searched and were not served a branded ad. And that green bar is our test group, individuals who searched and were served a branded ad in mainline 1. So again, you are looking at the lift in all 3 categories based on the impression alone, based on the consumer seeing your ad on the SERP page. So what does this mean? It means that for yourself, you should be investing in segment non-brand keywords to drive your business, especially ones that are incredibly important to you. And because you can have an impact when you do so on top of mind awareness, purchase intent, and market leadership. So think about your own search strategy, thinking about the keywords that you are bidding on now. Does it include non-brand? In addition to that, include your brand name in your ads. reap all the benefits that search has to offer you. Just by an individual seeing your name within the ad, you can drive all three categories. So ensure you're communicating to the consumer properly. Ensure that when you do serve an ad in mainline one, that your name, the make and model, your own dealership name, is included in that ad, because you can drive awareness for yourself even if the consumer clicks or doesn't click.
Just a question about that. The test group, they were presented ads that were branded by the manufacturer or the
Both. So branded ads overall, if Ford was serving an ad, they would have Ford in the ad copy. So you would see.
Someone was searching generally for a pickup truck, and then the ad said you should buy a Ford F-150.
Exactly, pickup truck.
Come on down to Smith Chevy and get your
So it's a good question. So for this particular study, it was done at the OEM national level, but the results of that could transfer to you as a dealership. If you include, the general study was to show if you can be impacted by the impression alone. So by absolutely, in your case, if you own a dealership, you could have the same impact by including your dealership name within that ad, whether it's the Ford F-150 at a national level or you're thinking about it at the dealership level. And also have target landing pages. We see a significant uplift in results when you are when you're driving consumers to a page that aligns to their search, aligns to their intent. So the statistical significance of this study was that to build awareness, when a consumer searched a non-brand query, non-brand search, and a brand served a branded ad in position 1, 67% more people recall that brand, which is a pretty significant lift. When you think about market leadership, for a brand that served a branded ad in mainline 1 on a non-brand search, 18% more people considered that brand a market leader. And when we think about the automotive industry, when we're trying to build trust with the consumer, it's incredibly important that they see us as a leader in the industry, that they trust us. And lastly, when we think about segment searches, again, when a consumer searched a non-brand search and a branded ad was served in position 1, 27% higher purchase intent. So again, this all speaks to the value of the impression and in how you're communicating with the consumer, that you can have an impact on those three categories: purchase intent, market leadership, top of mind awareness, by including your brand within the ad copy and including your dealership name within the ad copy. So we've talked about non-brand searches. We're also going to talk about conquest searches. If you think back to our definition list, conquesting is when you bid and serve an ad on a competitor's make or model. And we get this question a lot: does conquesting really add value? Does it work for me? What we found was that when a brand conquested another brand and served their own branded ad in mainline 3 below their competitor set, 25% more people recalled that brand in mainline 3. So you can expand your consumer consideration. You can even have an impact on those consumers that are not considering you initially by serving a branded ad in position 3 below your competitive set. So we've talked about non-brand, we've talked about conquest. We're going to spend some time talking about the importance of having a balanced strategy when you think about your own search strategy that you're currently implementing. And it's important that when we think about having a balanced strategy, that you find the right strategy for you and think about how you're operating and what your marketplace particularly looks like. So we're going to look at 2 graphs overall. The first graph we're going to look at is going to be for non-luxury car brands. We're looking at all the searches and all the activity across Spain, and we're looking at what is driving click performance at the tier 3 dealership level, and we're going to look at what is driving click performance at the OEM national level. And I encourage you to think about your own search strategy and what's driving your click volume at the moment to see if there's areas that you can over-index or you can improve on in order to drive your performance. So let's take a look at the non-luxury marketplace. So we see for the non-luxury marketplace that for tier 3 especially, there's even more conquesting going on. That a lot of clicks are being driven by this conquest strategy, bidding and serving the ad on a competitor's make and model. And we see that for both Tier 1 and Tier 3, retention is the strongest strategy, bidding and serving an ad on your own brand terms when they are searched. So incredibly important you think about your own performance when it comes to your own brand keywords. Are you driving a high performance? Are you ensuring that you are appearing in position 1? And we also see here too that segment strategy a little larger for Tier 1 OEM national than it is for Tier 3. Let's look at the luxury market. The luxury car marketplace, we see even more competition, more conquesting going on, especially both at the Tier 3 level and at the Tier 1 level, a lot higher in terms of the competitive marketplace. We also see that similar to the non-luxury, that retention strategy drives the majority of clicks. So think about your own search strategy. Are you performing well on your own brand terms? Are you appearing in position 1 to really drive your value? And we also see that for the non-luxury market, non-brand is a little heavier than the luxury. So again, you have to evaluate your own position in the marketplace to understand the approach and the strategy that you should be taking that best works for you. So when we think about this at the OEM national level and how we're using this information and what strategy that we are choosing, we think about it in terms of areas, in terms of regions, states, and cities. If we are advising a brand and what strategy they should take, we think about it in areas. So if we are entering into a marketplace, whether by region or state or city, where based on consumer search volume, there's just a higher volume of clicks and searches for another make or model, we know we're the underdog entering the marketplace. So we are going to employ a stronger conquest strategy and a stronger segment strategy to drive awareness for ourselves, to tap the consumer as they might not already be considering us. If we are operating in a marketplace that we know we are the brand leader based on looking across all the consumer behavior, based on looking at search volume and click volume, we know we have to employ in that area a strong retention strategy to push our hold in the marketplace, to prevent competitors from coming in and taking our clicks and impressions and driving performance. Now, when you think about it at a dealership level, how can you think about this? And I encourage you to think about who's surrounding you in terms of other dealerships. Are you in a highly competitive area? Do you need to be employing a certain retention strategy or conquest strategy to drive your business, to grow your consumer base? There's also very targeted ways that you could be thinking about how you talk to that consumer. And I encourage you to make sure that you're using things like conversion tracking and remarketing. So on Bing, we call conversion tracking UET. It's called Universal Event Tracking. That is our way of tracking conversions and setting up remarketing. And obviously, it's different depending upon the platform. But think about it this way. If a consumer comes to your website off of a search, and they don't convert, and they leave, and later on, they search a non-brand query, or they search a competitor's term, you know that you have to bid boost to them and employ your conquest strategy or your segment strategy to them because they are a valued user. They have already been to your website. You know that they are engaged. So you're willing to invest heavier in those other strategies because you've already qualified them as a user. So when I say be strategic about it, use the tools that are available to you via remarketing and conversion tracking to ensure that you're targeting individuals and employing those strategies in a way that you feel confident about where you are investing your money, that you're investing it in an individual that has already visited your website and they are now searching for a competitor's make and model. When you think back to that consideration journey over the course of 10 weeks, how do you continue to pull the attention back to you? How do you continue to be top of mind? Another way you might want to think about it is when we talk about dealerships, we're talking about very targeted areas in terms of geolocation. So we want to be targeting individuals that we know are located near us. We can broaden that. Think about the value that you bring to the marketplace. We just went through a study that proves and shows that ad copy and serving the impression alone can impact the consumer's thought process in terms of top-of-mind awareness, purchase intent, and market leadership. So if you know you bring a particular value to the marketplace, maybe in your area you have lower sales tax. You want to broaden that geo-targeting. Target people outside your area. Let them know the value that you bring. Include that in your ad copy to drive consumers to you, because you can have an impact on that thought process in terms of top of mind awareness, market leadership, and purchase intent. Know your value. Communicate that value. So we've covered a lot thus far. We've looked at the value of the impression, how you should be talking to the consumer when it comes to your ad copy. We've looked at that consumer purchase journey. So we're now going to look at performance analysis by position. We're going to look at how your position on the SERP, search engine result page, can drive performance. And we're also going to talk about, when it comes to this, how Tier 1 are OEM national brands, Tier 2 are regional dealerships, and Tier 3 our local dealerships should be operating together when we think about search in order to drive performance. So the objective of this study is, again, to look across Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 to understand how the positioning of all those different levels can grow and impact performance. We want to be thinking about the strategy as a whole brand and how we should be working together on the SERP to really drive value for the entire brand. And we hypothesized a few things when we did this study. We hypothesized that serving more ads would prevent competitors from stealing your performance. We hypothesized when it came to non-brand searches that if you served more ads and had this aligned strategy, that you could drive performance for your brand. And by serving and having an aligned strategy and serving ads on the SERP, the more ads you can prevent competitors from stealing your performance. So the whole point of this was to get an idea of if a brand works together across their tiers, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, that you can drive performance for the entire brand itself. And the role that as a Tier 2 and Tier 3 dealership, how you should be considering your importance. And we're communicating this to the OEM national level as well, that an aligned strategy drives better performance. So to do this, we looked across 6 large makes brands. And we looked across all their brands and all their tiers aligned to that brand. And we pulled in over 78,000 consumers, which equated to 400,000 searches plus. So we're pulling in a huge amount of data across the SERP to understand what this performance and what this relationship should be when we talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. How should we be working together? And we did the study specifically between July and August of 2017 for those specific DMA location areas. What we found was, when we looked at it, that misalignment of tiers can drive inefficiencies. So we're going to start by focusing on brand Tier 1 searches. So when I say a brand search, it's any search that contains a make or a model. When I say Tier 1, I mean a Tier 1 meaning in that search itself, there was no mention of dealership, there was no mention of price, there was no mention of parts or services. It's strictly a Tier 1 brand search. That's how we're qualifying that for the purpose of this study. And we found when someone searched a Tier 1 branded search, that Position 1 captured 80% of those clicks. So this speaks to the value of Position 1. That 80% of clicks were captured in that first position on the SERP. But we also found that 20% of clicks were captured in positions 2 through 4. When you think about the amount of volume we're pulling in to do this study, is a pretty large amount. Now this represents the accounts that are capturing those clicks. So that dark green dot you see are the Tier 1 OEM national brands. And that light green dot that you see are the Tier 2 and Tier 3 regional and local dealership brands. And essentially what each one is telling you is which brand, which account level is capturing clicks for that position. Let's look at Position 1, where 80% of clicks were captured. 79% of the brands that captured those clicks was a Tier 1 OEM national account. However, 21% of the accounts and brands that captured those clicks in Position 1 was a Tier 2 or Tier 3 account. So this is an instance where on a tier 1 branded search, tier 2 and tier 3 is jumping over tier 1 and serving an ad in position 1. When this happens, it creates inefficiencies. When this happens, it drives up the cost, it drives up the CPC for that brand. So we want to make sure that there's an alignment strategy in place. We want to make sure that we are operating together so we avoid that from happening. But if you do see, as we head to position 4, that dark green dot slowly goes down. And that light green dot, as we head to position 4, slowly picks up. So it's really tiers 2 and 3, those brands and those accounts that are picking up the clicks in lower positions. This is what we want to see. This is the alignment that we want to speak to. That tier 2 and 3 is supporting tier 1, not bidding or serving above tier 1, creating more competition for your own brand. We want to ensure that there's a support strategy in place and there's an alignment strategy in place to ensure that tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 are working together and not against one another. So what's the competitive importance of this in terms of when you think about competition and when you think about driving performance for your own brand? Why is it so important that we have a structured tier strategy, that tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 work together? And the importance is because it drives awareness. It drives performance. It keeps out the competitor's consideration. Especially as we're heading into a very competitive 2018-2019 marketplace, it's important that we are doing so. So for brand queries, when a brand query was searched, we found that for that brand on their own brand query, so someone is searching for them, only served an ad in position 1. They only worried about filling the first position, and that's all they worried about. An average of 5 other competitors, 5 other brands in their tiers were able to win a click. When a brand focused on having an aligned strategy across their tiers, position 1, position 2, and position 3, and filled all those positions with that aligned strategy, that only an average of 2.5 other brands and competitors across their tiers were able to win the click. So we are talking about how we protect our brand when someone is searching for us from competition. And we just went over a study that shows that by serving an ad alone, by that impression, and using a conquest strategy, that you can drive awareness for your brand by appearing in position 3. So we want to prevent that from happening. We want to prevent competitors from even serving an ad on the SERP when our brand is searched. And you do that by having an aligned tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 strategy. That for those brands that did that strategy, for those brands that had that aligned tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 alignment for those first 3 positions, that a significant reduction in the average number of competitors were able to win that click. And we want to make sure that we are doing that. We want to make sure that we are protecting our brand. We want to prevent conquesting from any ads even appearing on the SERP, because again, by the impression alone, we now know a brand can drive awareness. And we do that by having an aligned strategy. So we've looked at brand queries. We're going to just take a look at non-brand queries. This is when, again, searches, there includes no make or model reference. And we wondered if on segment non-brand searches, could you drive your performance by having this aligned strategy? So not only protect your brand, but drive performance. And we found is that for those brands on a non-brand search, so we're talking about growing our consumer base, this person has no affiliation to any make or model, that for that brand that only focused on serving an ad in position 1, that they were able to win the click 25% of the time, opposed to if that brand on a non-brand search served an ad in all 3 positions, position 1, position 2, and position 3, and had that aligned strategy across their tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, that they were able to win the click 50% of the time, a huge jump. And I want to push your focus to looking at that light green line. That light green line is our competitor consideration, that when a brand only served an ad in position 1, that an average of 3 other brand competitors were able to appear on the SERP. And then when a brand served 3 ads, filled the main lines, mainline 1, mainline 2, mainline 3, with their tiers, a significantly less number of competitors were able to serve an ad. So again, think back to our first study that on non-brand searches, you can grow brand awareness by simply serving an impression, by appearing on the SERP. You can drive awareness for your own brand and prevent that from happening when we work together as a tier 1, a tier 2, and to tier 3. That you can also not only reduce the competitive consideration that's serving ads, but you can drive your performance from a click perspective. So we've covered a lot. We've gone over a few things, but if there's anything you take away from what we've discussed, I want you to remember these 5 things. That one, mainline position on segment keywords, that value of the impression is so important that when someone searches a non-brand term, no mention of make or model, by serving an ad alone, you can have an impact on their top-of-mind awareness, purchase intent. 27% more people want to purchase your brand, your make or model. Top-of-mind awareness and perceived market leadership, 18% more people perceive you as a market leader. So this means that go back and check your ad copy. Make sure that you have your brand and your dealership name within your ad copy. Make sure you are including your value to the marketplace within your ad copy. For those non-brand terms that are incredibly important to you and your business, make sure you are bidding to mainline 1. It is incredibly important to the impact that it can have on the consumer. And again, when you think back to how long that journey is over the course of 10 weeks, and what that consideration process looks like in terms of the number of makes and models that are considered, this is incredibly important to driving your business. This is incredibly important to how you communicate and engage the consumer. 2, mainline position on conquest keywords, that you can have an impact on the consumer's thought process by employing a conquest strategy. 25% more people recall a brand that's conquesting in mainline 3, position 3, when serving below competitors. That if you are operating in an area where there's a lot of competitive dealerships, that you can have an impact by conquesting. You can enter the consumer's thought process and journey even when they're not directly searching for you. It is a proactive way to grow your business. Number 3 takeaway. You have to have an aligned strategy on brand keywords. That when we saw that there was an aligned strategy, there was a 42% decrease in the average number of competitors that appeared on the SERP. So when we think about growing our business, when we think about protecting our business, when we operate as a whole across tier 1, OEM national accounts, tier 2, regional dealership accounts, and tier 3, local dealership accounts, when we are aligned on a strategy, when a consumer is searching for us, we are able to prevent competitors from serving an ad, which becomes incredibly important when we think about the impact the impression can have on the consumer. We want to remove them from the consideration process. We want to stop them from serving any ad on the SERP. 4, reduce the number of segment clicks that a competitor can gain. So when we think about segment, which is when someone searches a query that contains no reference to make or model, that you can improve the chances of you winning that click if you line the mainline 1, mainline 2, mainline 3. So when we talk about brand, we're talking about protecting our brand from competitors. We talk about a non-brand search, a segment search, we are talking about improving our performance, ensuring that we are winning the click. And our odds of winning that clip greatly increase when we have that aligned tier strategy, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And lastly, last thing that you should take away is that think about your performance. Think about your position in the marketplace. We talked about that balanced strategy of conquest, segment, and retention. Think about the marketplace that you're operating in. Think about the competitive set that is surrounding you. Think about how you're communicating to the consumer and how you want to grow. And pick the strategy that best supports your business, but be strategic about it and be targeted about it. And the last thing I'll leave you with is test, test, test. You do not know if this is going to work for you unless you test it, unless you try it. But you have to be willing to try. You have to be willing to track your performance and evaluate how you are doing. We are headed into an incredibly competitive marketplace, 3.09 million additional units and models, a large number of consideration for the consumer. They have a lot to choose from. How are you engaging them? How are you communicating to them? How are you driving your business forward? And you will not survive in this marketplace unless you are willing to test and try new things. So I encourage you to be proactive about the way that you think about your business, about the way that you grow your business. I encourage you to be strategic, be thoughtful about the strategies that you are employing. Make sure that you're using things like conversion tracking and remarketing to target consumers by strategy, to know that you're investing in individuals that are worth it, that are engaged. And I encourage you to feel empowered. Feel empowered that you can drive your business forward. Feel empowered that you can succeed in this marketplace, and you can do it on search. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And that's the end of the presentation. So any questions regarding the research I was on? Sure.
You talked about using paid search as kind of a way to build branding, and I
Sure.
think as the impression was shown,
Yep.
it would make sense that that would work.
Yeah.
I guess two-part question. The first would be, aren't there more cost-effective ways to build brand outside of paid search?
Sure.
And obviously, what are the benefits then versus those of using a paid search strategy?
Right. Okay. So paid search, there's a lot of benefits to paid search itself. Obviously, you're leading people to targeted landing pages. You can track them. You can continue to serve to them as they search for competitors. The branding piece is just an added value of search. Of course, it may not be. There are other ways to brand that may be more cost efficient. What I'm just saying is that search there's very powerful reasons why you would want to use search to grow your customer base, to enter into that consideration process when consumers aren't even thinking about you. The branding piece is just another way you can further drive that. It may not be the most cost-effective way, but think about it this way. When you talk about the value of the impression, someone's not even clicking and you're driving awareness. Unless they click, you don't pay for that. It's free. So why not reap the benefits of that? Serve your ad. Include your name within the ad copy. If no one clicks, it's okay. They still were aware of you, and it costs you nothing. So when we talk about it from a cost per click perspective, that branding piece, due to the impression alone, costs you nothing, which could be optimal. Any other questions about this study? Sure.
Think about conquesting.
Sure.
And if I'm a Chevy dealer and I want to conquest to a Ford, keywords, will
Sure.
I be paying more because I'm not a Ford dealer?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to think about this. So we get this question a lot. So yes, the cost per click may vary in terms of what you'll have to pay to conquest. It depends upon the competition in the marketplace. It depends on exactly what keyword in which you are bidding on. But yes, generally, your conquesting term may vary in cost. You could think about this in one, again, the value of the impression, just by serving that ad alone can help drive value for you. And you can also improve that by things like quality score, can help you in terms of your cost per click and the value that you bring. So are you leading people to a right landing page? Are you making sure that your ad copy is correct? That could all help with that. But ultimately, when it comes to cost per click, it really is dependent upon, obviously, how the marketplace is positioned in the competition, which generally, when you're conquesting, it tends to be a little higher.
So specifically when making a landing page for conquesting,
Yeah.
what can I do to improve the quality?
Yeah. So you can ensure that, again, your ad copy. So if you're conquesting on Ford?
Yeah.
So if you're conquesting on Ford, you still have to include, you can't put Ford within your ad copy. You have to include your own make and model and your own dealership name, if you want to, within your ad copy. You can improve your quality score by ensuring that your landing page aligns to that ad copy. So ensuring that if your ad copy has a certain make or model on it, that you're driving them to a page that is featuring that specific make or model. The better that they aligned, the more the consumer lands on that page and engaged, the better quality score that you'll have. So that's, yeah, please.
So I also work with her on the data side. So something that we've seen works well on the conquesting side, and we've talked to some OEMs will allow it, some don't, is at your dealership level. If you know that people are comparing the Dodge Ram versus the F-150, having a page that does side-by-side comparison, so that way that impacts your quality score. You can't put Ford and Dodge both in the ad copy if you're Dodge, but when you get to the landing page, it shows relevance to that Ford make and model.
Right.
So having the side-by-side comparison page, that helps improve the quality score and makes it more
Exactly, exactly.
We do the same that he's asking about on the Chevy dealer.
Sure.
It's F-150. We find we have very high impression, more expensive, but we have more quality clicks to our landing page. We do, why drive a Ford when you can drive a Chevy for $99 a month?
Yeah,
And we have it in our
on your line. Yeah, that's perfect.
Would you say a comparison page would be more at the dealership level or the manufacturer level?
It could be on both. I don't know if you could certainly, I mean, you probably see it more at the manufacturing level.
Or it seems to be at the manufacturer level, though. That's why I'm asking if it's kind of makes sense financially to take dealership dollars and be able to do that comparison
Yeah.
on search, though, because it is such a high level at that. Like they're still kind of not sure what car they're going to buy, so that really comes
Sure.
up to the manufacturer to kind of find those.
If you could
To-
localize it though, I mean, take like in Ashland, North Carolina, Subarus do really well because all-wheel drive in the mountains. If they could provide some localized comparison of why Subaru versus other cars does really well in the terrain, then that content is unique and useful to the folks that aren't living in that area.
We did a chart that showed the Lincoln Navigator or the F-150
Yeah,
with 30 lines
yeah,
coming down.
yeah, 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 yeah.
All the way to the dealership, customers floating 6, 7, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
And so it can work locally.
Yes, absolutely. Which is where it comes to being targeted about it, right? Like making sure, one, that you are, again, when we talk about conquesting, there is a price to it. But if you do it if you're employing remarketing strategies and you're tracking conversions and you're doing it on a consumer that you know is engaged, that you know maybe has visited you and already considered you in that process, and maybe they're going away and they're like, let me consider somebody else. Employ that conquesting strategy on them because you know that they're an engaged consumer. It's worth that investment.
For fishing for content, for
Sure.
car versus car, truck versus truck, go to the sales force, say, what do you use when you got a guy in here that wants to dodge, right? And you know, that can be a sales meeting topics.
Sure.
They can see their words up on the page, which is more engaged.
Yep.
And gets them to buy in, and it can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. Granted, yes. Yeah.
You know, as far as trying to be aligned with them, and from that premium brand perspective, there really wasn't a lot of conquesting that it looked like they were doing at that level. Do you think that it's going to be not effective if you're doing too much conquesting because you might be unaligning yourself with the tier 1 or tier 2?
Sure. Are you a local dealership? Oh, there you go. So we are, a few things on that. We are working with the manufacturers to talk about this tier strategy and how to go about it and how to align. So it obviously stems from top down and it flows down. So we are working to change that and to fix that, to ensure that everything is aligned. And you were talking about conquest. Mention yourself.
Are you almost worried about being not as effective if you're trying to conquest, because how much conquesting are they doing? It, you know, up there it really did not seem like it's that much that's being done from tier 1, tier 2. So if you are putting yourself into the third spot and you're unaligning yourself with tier 1 and tier 2,
Yeah.
is that going to affect what you think your overall click is? Because you said, you know, being aligned, put it down by 40% of clicking on a competitor. If
Yeah.
you're throwing yourself in there, is it going to mess that alignment up?
Mess that alignment up. Yeah, it depends upon the brand strategy alignment, I guess, to begin with. That it depends upon what that is. And are you referring to the chart that has performance by click based on strategy? Yeah. I mean, conquesting, obviously retention is the most important strategy. When it comes to conquesting, every brand does it differently. And again, depending upon how they're structured and tiered, it may throw off that alignment. But we try to encourage that if it's happening, if you're a dealership and you're going to be conquesting, that there are cues to kind of make it so that it's at the dealership level. So like dealership near me for maybe Ford and you're a different dealer. So you want to conquest on that term. So we try to align it to not break that alignment by pushing that you should be conquesting on keywords that particularly reference maybe a sale or a test drive or a dealership name, so it's more aligned at the tier 3 level to not overlap with tier 1, which is also conquesting. So we try to push that there are signals within how the consumer is searching to help keep that alignment. That makes sense. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming, and wish you the best of luck.